candidates this morning are James Mendrick and Greg Whalen. And Mr. Mendrick has gone first. If you could begin with your opening statement, please.
Hello. Hi. Thank you so much for your hospitality. I appreciate you allowing us to be here and talk. My name is James Mendrick. I'm running for the office of DuPage County Sheriff. I've been with the Sheriff's Office for over 22 years. I've done every job from patrolman to sergeant, detective, sergeant, lieutenant, watch commander, K-9 commander, accreditation manager, major, administrative bureau chief. I've run the crime lab, the courthouse, IT, civil division. I've managed the budget for several cycles, presented that budget to the county board. So I've done all the jobs at the Sheriff's Office. So it's been a long, good career. I think I have the experience that's going to be necessary to successfully deal with some of these fiscal times that are coming up. And I also have the backing of Men and Women in Blue. The sheriff's deputies have endorsed me through their local chapters, and I think that's very important. For me, I would not be doing this if I didn't have the support of the rank and file. That gives me my motivation to do what I'm doing. And I think between budget knowledge, I think that's very important because we could all have the greatest ideas in the world, but if you don't have the budget to do them, it's just talk. You have to be able to actually accomplish what you're setting out to do in your platform. So between budget experience, the police support, many of the police chiefs are also supporting me. Local police chiefs, we need to be getting along with the other law enforcement and fire services around us also. I think that with all those elements put together, that I would be your best candidate for sheriff. Thank you.
Mr. Whalen.
Thank you for coming and joining us today. My name is Greg Whalen. I'm also running for sheriff. A little bit about myself. I live in Clarendon Hills with my family. I have my wonderful wife, Tiffany, along with our 5 children, ranging from 12 years of age all the way down to 7 months. I do not work for the Sheriff's Department. I am a candidate from the outside. I work for a municipality up on the North Shore called Glencoe. In addition to being a police officer up in Glencoe, I'm also cross-trained as a firefighter and a paramedic. I currently hold the rank of lieutenant with the village of Glencoe, which means I am a supervisor for all 3 disciplines. I had the opportunity to spend on the multi-jurisdictional SWAT team, operate as a team leader for that team, ran the tactical paramedics, and the weapons of mass destruction element of that team that was integrated into that team. I have a master's degree in public safety administration from Lewis University, bachelor's degree in fire science from Southern Illinois. I'm a graduate of Northwestern University Center for Public Safety Staff and Command and their Supervision of Police Personnel course. I jumped into the race for sheriff because I believe the role of a sheriff on the county level is much more than just a law enforcement role. It's about developing partnerships. It's about working together with all entities within the county. It's about getting back to our roots and being part of our communities and working together to bring everything together to build a better DuPage.
Thank you. Staying with you, Mr. Whalen. Would you outline the strengths and weaknesses of the department and how you would address the challenges?
I believe the department's sitting in very good shape. They are out in the community. They have tons of talented men and women that are part of their agency. As we move along in our agency or in our world, the law enforcement profession has become a complex profession. And I think one thing that all agencies need to do is start to become better partners with our communities. We need to be working together. We need to make sure everybody feels safe so that people come forward, they report crimes, they testify, and they become essentially our partners so that we can have a safe place to live, work.
Mr. Mendrick?
Hi, I think that we have a very good agency. We have great deputies working in the Corrections Bureau and court security and law enforcement detectives, the crime lab, our dispatch, our IT. There are a lot of different disciplines that we carry at the Sheriff's Office, and I think we do very good with what we have. I think some of the weaknesses have been historically relationships with some of the other agencies. I'd look to see the Sheriff's Office as being the center of county-wide initiatives for major crimes task force, SWAT response, K-9, and all the other disciplines that we carry. I think relationships with the other 32 municipalities of fire and police, I think, is very important. I think that working in tandem with these other agencies also combines resources, which increases headcount for all the agencies and also brings down your fiscal cost to the taxpayers by doing things jointly.
Staying with you, Mr. Mendrick, what are the different responsibilities of the Sheriff's Office?
Well, the Sheriff's Office, again, you have the corrections facility, and that's the highest liability area of our agency. We also have the courthouse. We're charged with court security. We have a patrol division, a detective division. We have an IT environment. We have the civil division, civil process. We have warrants. We have crime lab. And we have the only bomb squad in the county. We have SWAT teams, K-9. And I think that's why it's very important that the candidate for sheriff has experience in all these realms. I've worked in most of these areas and managed all their headcount and their budget. I think without that knowledge of all these different properties, we're not just a police agency, we're not just a jail, we're not just a courthouse. There are so many other disciplines within our agency, and I think the experience that I bring will be able to manage them all.
Thank you. Mr. Whalen?
So the Sheriff's Department is responsible for the corrections facility, the DuPage County Jail. It's responsible for court security, and it's also responsible for a law enforcement portion of the county. It's responsible for all of unincorporated DuPage County, in which it patrols. It should be there as a resource to our municipalities throughout the county, so that being that the Sheriff's Department is a larger agency, if a smaller agency doesn't have the capabilities of certain skill sets, they should be able to reach out to the Sheriff's Department. The biggest thing I would say is when you look at being a leader in any municipality, any county, any form of government, it's impossible to know all the intricate workings of each and every task there. We need to use the skill sets that are within the agency and pick the qualified people out there to build a strong leadership team in order to lead effectively throughout our county.
Staying with you, what is the biggest department need and what are your plans to address it?
I believe one of the biggest department needs is addressing our incidents of mass violence that keep coming, in pretty much big circle. Our school shootings, our incidents and businesses and stuff continue nonstop. And in order for us to be effective in stopping that, we need to work and partner with all municipalities. We need to work with our fire departments. We need to teach them how they could respond with the police and start providing medical care when these incidents occur. We need to work with our social services to help identify, people who may be ideal individuals that would be looking to commit these mass violence incidents. In the end, if we take all these elements together, bring them together, we can make DuPage County safer, and it's key to have this training and have it across the board, county-wide, not each individual municipality doing their own thing and the county doing their own thing.
Thank you. Mr. Mendrick?
Also, that has been a center of my platform for quite some time, is school violence. And there are two aspects to solving the riddle of school violence, and the first one is the sociological needs. Our school liaison officers that we have at our schools need to be well versed to identify the needs of mental illness, mental health issues, developmental disorders, and be able to intervene. It's scary, but my kids come home and say they believe that they know who the next shooter is going to be in their school, and that scares me when I hear that. So that tells me that it's identifiable and it's preventable. If we know the cause, that's part of the solution. The other half of the solution, though, is training and technology. We now have the ability to hook into camera systems at the schools and the PA system. So instead of letting the school authorities have to deal with these issues by themselves for the first 5 to 7 minutes, we can actually have a panic button go directly to our dispatch. We can use the PA systems to direct people out of the hot zones, at the same time pump the feed from the cameras right to the police officer's cell phone that's in the school area and to all the people who are responding, so we can mitigate quickly.
Thank you. Staying with you, Mr. Mendrick. We have several questions regarding the relationship between the county sheriff and ICE. Generally, what is the county's relationship with ICE and what should it be? And should law enforcement involve itself in federal immigration matters? And specifically, does the county have a federal government contract to house ICE detainees?
It's a lot of questions. Actually, we are not an arm of immigration or an arm of ICE. We are the sheriff's office. We could not take on the responsibilities of ICE. We wouldn't have the manpower to do it. We used to house the ICE people in corrections, but we no longer do that. You know, it's one of those things where they have their federal reasonings for what they do and their jobs, and we have ours at the local level. I do believe, though, that, you know, I feel bad that a lot of these people become victims that are here undocumented, and that's because every day, I can't tell you the political answer, but I can tell you what I see on the street every day, and I see people who are victims of crime that are unwilling to report. I see people that we go to medical calls when the police show up at the fire department. They're afraid to let us in. And I think we need to lead people to the path of proper immigration to keep them safe. My job is to keep people safe no matter who you are, no matter if you're undocumented, documented. But if we can do something to make you safer and show you that path to immigration so you aren't victimized, I think that would be a great start.
Thank you. Mr. Whalen?
Would you be able to just repeat the question?
Certainly. These issues address the relationship with ICE. Specifically, what should that relationship between the county and ICE be? Is there a purpose in involving the county in federal immigration matters? And specifically, is there a government contract to house ICE detainees?
Okay. For the most part, with cooperation with ICE, the most important thing to understand here is Illinois has a state statute that deals with law enforcement interaction with ICE. That's called the Illinois Trust Act, and that's what Illinois law enforcement officers should follow and will follow. When it comes down to federal immigration law and, you know, county, local police officers, we don't have jurisdiction over federal immigration law. That is the federal agency's responsibility, and that is their jurisdiction. As it talks about our relationships with communities and everything else, is, you know, it's absolutely true that if we set up an environment in which people are fearful to contact the police or interact with the police because of their immigration status, their citizenship, we create major problems for law enforcement, because we need people to step forward. We want people to report that they're victims of crimes. We want people to testify, and we want people to be witnesses for us.
Thank you. In a related question, can you explain your position on sanctuary cities?
So the sanctuary cities concept, to me, my interpretation of it is it's ensuring that everyone has the opportunity to equal rights and fairness. When it comes down to the Illinois Trust Act, it provides an avenue for people to interact with the police. It ensures that law enforcement is not going to detain somebody based on their immigration status solely. They're not going to talk, you know, with people just based on who they are, where they're from. As we grow in this community and the political environment that we're in, we need to just assure everyone that we are an impartial part of this process, and we are working to make sure everyone feels safe.
Thank you. Mr. Mendrick?
You know, again, the law is the law. As sheriff, you follow any law, no matter what any personal opinions are. But I will say, again, I can tell you just by doing the job, for as long as I have in 22 years, I nor anybody else I've seen in our agency has ever made an arrest for immigration status alone. It hasn't happened as far as I know. So I think that clearly delineates the difference between federal and county government. We don't get involved in that. But again, I think there is a responsibility of the sheriff to help lead people to proper documentation so they're not victimized. You know, there's even pseudo lawyers that approaches people and take them for $5,000 to $10,000 a piece to tell them that they're going to give them a visa or a U visa, and then it turns out to be fictitious. And I think that we have to start giving them an avenue to report to us. Obviously, we're not going to arrest them on any kind of contact for immigration. That's just not how we work. And again, in 22 years, it's never happened as far as I know. So I think it's a responsibility of the sheriff to actually try to intervene and help these people.
Thank you. Staying with you, Mr. Mendrick, what is your position on the county sheriff's office procurement and use of, I believe it's former armor and weapons from the U.S. Defense Department?
I think that that's a program that you're speaking of called a LESO program, where you actually take properties of the military, and they're very cheap. I think it's a double-edged sword though too. I don't want to over-militarize the sheriff's office either. I don't think we want to drive down the streets and make it look like we're going to be Humvees in your yard, big pieces of armored vehicles and stuff. I mean, having some of those that we already have, I think we're good with what we have. I don't think we need more of that. Also, those are used weapons. They're used products. A lot of times they're not in the greatest of condition. And I think we need to actually be looking at modernizing what we do and not taking leftovers from military.
Thank you, Mr. Whalen.
As you spoke with the LESO program, I believe the LESO program, when it was designed, was to help law enforcement, local law enforcement out that didn't have the capabilities to purchase, such as armored vehicles and stuff when they're dealing with high-risk law enforcement situations. I think it's absolutely critical that we have the capability to get vehicles that are protective of law enforcement, especially when we deal with certain situations, but we have to run that fine line. And just as comparison, for an agency to go purchase a Bearcat, which is commonly used in the SWAT setting, is could be upwards of $300,000 for that vehicle, depending on how it's equipped. With the LESO program, they can essentially get a vehicle that's armored similarly, that wasn't necessarily designed for law enforcement use, but could be modified to work for the cost of what the shipping is and the membership in the program. So it can be beneficial, but we need to just follow that fine line to make sure we're not militarizing the police department.
Thank you. What will you do to promote diversity in the sheriff's department?
I think the key with that is it's two prongs. I think within the department, we need to work on recruitment, and we need to get out into all of our communities and try to build a department that is a makeup of the communities in which we serve, which is multicultural, multi-diversity. Every law enforcement agency in the area is seeing the similar issues where it's becoming harder and harder and harder to get qualified candidates. And we need to work to try to overcome the problems we are having with recruitment. On the other end of it with diversity is we need to make sure we train appropriately. The Illinois Law Enforcement Training Standards Board recently released a different group of standards that we have to train on annually, triannually, and so on and so forth. And we need to make sure we're training on those standards, such as cultural diversity, cultural competency, and make sure that our employees, our deputies are aware of the different environments so that we treat people appropriately at all times.
Thank you, Mr. Mendrick.
I think diversity is a very important issue. My father, Joseph Mendrick, was the Oak Park Police Chief, and back in the 70s, he created one of the first diversity programs in law enforcement. I've copied part of his model early in my campaign, and what it is you want to be reflective of the community that you serve. I have been, through this campaign process, I've been taking advantage of being able to go to many mosques, churches, different religious and cultural background groups, and already started a recruiting process of telling them that if elected, I want them to start applying. I think we need to go to foreign language college classes and go for people who actually speak foreign language. That's our biggest need. I mean, if you're Hispanic or Polish, wouldn't you rather have a deputy speaking the language that's native to you? I think you can mitigate the problem much better. I think we need more females at the sheriff's office also. So I'm copying part of my father's platform that he did as Oak Park Police Chief, but it's very salient and works.
Thank you. And staying with you, Mr. Mendrick, the opioid crisis has become an epidemic in DuPage County as it has throughout the country. What steps would you initiate to address this critical problem?
There's no one cause for this, so there's multiple solutions. I mean, I look at a three-tiered approach. I think the first is diversion. We've been working with a group called Save a Child's Life Foundation, where they're actually doing voluntary drug testing for people sixth grade through high school. And if they volunteer for this, they help them with everything from tuition, getting into schools, getting jobs, getting preference points, even gifts from businesses. And I would participate in a program in a heartbeat to get preference points for being a deputy. Also, there's a technological and educational realm to teach families the signs of drug use. I mean, with these cell phones now, we have the package of the phone we give them to our kids. You could echo every single keystroke that they do. You could know everything they're doing through the use of their phone. They just need to be educated with the parents. And then there obviously is enforcement. I think canine enforcement is really big. And I think working as a joint task force with all the other municipalities, the sheriff's office can give jurisdiction to the other deputies for this task force. I think those are the 3 prongs.
Thank you. Mr. Whalen?
So addressing the opioid epidemic, which is nationwide, it's not local to DuPage County, we need to take a 3-part approach to that. The first part of it is the education part of it. We need to get better at our public education. We need to have specialized trained officers, deputies that are out there that could go out and explain to the parents, explain to people early signs and symptoms that their loved ones or their family members or friends are becoming addicted to opioids. Early detection is a big part of the key. We need to teach people how to properly dispose of their medications and make sure we get them off the street so they're not still in the house, they're not get into the wrong hands. The other element is social services. We need to work very close with our social services. We need to take it to a step that when we have an incident which involves addiction, that we could call an on-call social services crisis worker out to work with that family immediately and increase the chances of further follow-up. And the last part of that is enforcement, and that is a part that's got to be done with all 3 of these parts working in sync.
Thank you. What can be done to stop the increase in burglary and car break-ins?
That is a problem that is going across this whole northern part of the state. The biggest thing that we could do to prevent burglaries, car break-ins, auto thefts, is to start with locking the vehicle doors, start with removing your keys from the vehicles, and start with locking your homeowner doors. The other part of it is if you see something suspicious, you need to report it, because the law enforcement, no matter where you are, can't be everywhere at the same time. So we rely on our communities to help us by reporting that they see suspicious behavior, and we can respond appropriately to investigate it. But the number 1 way to prevent this stuff is to lock your cars, take your keys from your cars.
Well, I think in any crime, we have to start using the technological tools that are out there now too, and that's part of it. Predictive policing is where you can actually analyze all the data of any crime streaks or patterns, and you can predict based on time of day, location, basically where the calls of certain types are most likely to be committed. And then you have people proactively police those areas to get in front of crime instead of being reactionary. And I think that's the problem a lot of times, is being reactionary is not going to solve the problem, it's going to mitigate it after it's done. So predictive policing is very valuable from that. Also, I do believe in moving away from site-based server rooms into a cloud-based technology where we're using pads and phones. If we had the Sheriff's Office app, you could actually be in your environment, see anything unusual, and snap a photo with your phone and send it through the app. So then all of a sudden the community is engaged with us in helping keep your communities clean. You never know when you snap a picture and then there's a burglary the next day that all of a sudden we have to make the model color of the plate of the vehicle. I think we have to look at moving forward in law enforcement, doing more with technology.
What kinds of policies will you pursue to promote social and racial justice in the county? Mr. Mendrick?
Well, again, I go back to making the different parts of the community part of the Sheriff's Office. There's no better way to mitigate racial or social issues than invite them in, bring them in as deputies. We need more foreign language speaking deputies. We need more of a racial makeup. We need more females within the ranks of the Sheriff's Office. A lot of people say, well, they wish something was different. Then I invite you to come in and apply. I just beseech you, please apply for the Sheriff's Office and become one of the people working at the Sheriff's Office. I think if we bring this diversity into the Sheriff's Office, we'll mitigate a lot of those problems by understanding our own people having the knowledge base and contributing. And another part is, obviously, it's training. We do want to continually train our people, and not just train them once and then that's it. It has to be continued evolving training. And I think we bring other people of different cultures in to help us with that training.
I believe the best way to address this approach is to start with making sure the training aspect is there. We need to make sure that everyone who is an employee of the Sheriff's Department and a law enforcement officer in general has an understanding of the different cultures that are out there. We need to understand, how to become a part of community and be a partnership with our communities. So often as law enforcement's looking as this authority figure that's above, everyone. We shouldn't be there just when something bad happens. We should be there as part of our community. We should be being intertwined with our community so we could develop that trust. The other element of it is increasing diversity from within. That's something that can't be done overnight, but we can work to do that, and we can work to hire people who are more diverse and then help expand from there.
Mr. Whalen, what training do you plan for department employees in regard to mental health?
So the Sheriff's Department has already taken the crisis intervention team model and started to deliver it throughout their agency. I think that model is an outstanding model. I had the opportunity to go through the training myself a few years ago, and it was absolutely incredible. The part of that program that I believe has a fault in it, however, is that in each and every profession that's out there, if you don't use a skill, you tend to lose that skill. So I think we need to take that crisis intervention team training model that's out there, and we need to expand it so that we have regular continuing education on that specific type of skill set that we're using to interact with those in crisis suffering from mental illness.
Yeah, I think this is very important, and the crisis intervention team training is critical. I think that's a really big thing, and I was the instructor for the autism section of that training for our office to get our certification. And as a father of a special needs son, I think I understand a lot of these issues better than most. It gives me an inside track to some of what we're dealing with in our communities. For 14 years, my wife and I, who's a nurse at Good Sam, or Psychiatric Services, we've immersed ourselves in this culture to better understand our family needs. And this is what I look to bring to DuPage County Sheriff's Office, is that inside knowledge of developmental disorders, mental health issues. Mental health is probably the largest problem within DuPage County, and I think nationwide, because opioid use, a lot of it is self-medicating because of mental health issues. The school shootings and all that is obviously part of mental health issues. So mental health is the overlying thing that we need to train on. That's probably going to be the biggest problem that we're going to have in DuPage County.
All right, and we are beginning to run out of time, and we have had these gentlemen answer multiple questions, so we're going to proceed with closing statements at this time. Mr. Mendrick.
Well, again, thank you for having me here. I believe that I have the experience, the knowledge, the abilities, and I mean no offense to my opponent, but he does come from an area that is less than 4 square miles. DuPage County is 336 square miles with a population of almost 1 million. The jurisdiction that he enjoys is about a little under 9,000 population. I think that is a big differentiation in experience. I think somebody who's worked the streets of DuPage for 22 years, somebody who's met all the people, religious groups, the homeowners groups, the township government, all of the different myriads of people, the diverse population that we have. I've been working with people for 22 years. I know DuPage County. I know what DuPage County needs to thrive. I know the budget of DuPage County. I have the police backing. I think I have all the elements of experience and knowledge and intricate relationships with the people of DuPage County. Thank you.
In closing, I appreciate everyone coming. Like my opponent says, I do come from a smaller agency, but what makes me unique is I have that multidiscipline training. I have that exposure on the command level, the operations level, and the administrative level. And through my experience in Glencoe, being a smaller community, I've had the opportunity to participate on specialized teams. And that SWAT team that I talked about early on covers 68 communities over 5 counties. That SWAT team goes on more calls than any SWAT team around here, with the exception of probably Chicago. I mean, they are a very extensive team, and I was a supervisor on that team, going and interacting with different municipalities on a moment's notice. I have the ability to act as a liaison and bring all of public safety together, because that is what I've focused on my entire career. I brought the Rescue Task Force program to the North Shore, to that Mavis area. That program is now being taught statewide, and it's a program that I helped write because I'm passionate about teaching police and fire to work together.
Thank you to these candidates.